Okay guys, so today I wanted to talk a little bit more about a few things regarding classes um, that I just wanted to go over. The first thing is that classes can have multiple constructors. So I'm just following with the example that we had before where we created a person class. So if you guys remember, the constructor is how we make an object, a person object. This person has a skin color, eye color, height, and weight. Okay, and then when we create it, we have to give the skin color and the eye color. We have to give it before we do that. Okay, so this is one constructor here. You can have multiple constructors for a class depending on what you need. So for example, I'm gonna create what the default constructor looks like. And so the default constructor is just person, and you have the parentheses and the brackets, and that's it. So that is the constructor, the default constructor. So for example, when I went to create a person, um, before I had to do it like this over here. Let me bring it up. That's how I had to do it before, right? I had to specify new person and then skin color and then eye color, I think it is. But because I have created a new constructor where I don't have to specify anything, I should be able to just create a person like that. Let's go ahead and compile it. Let me check. I don't think this must be an old error. Yes, because I have this twice. Okay, so let me just do it again. Okay, so as you can see, it compiled just fine. It can create that object just fine. And that's because I have two constructors now. I have a default constructor, what the default looks like anyways, is no arguments or anything. And then I have a special constructor here. Now, I could create more constructors. I could add, for example, that they have to put in the height and then the weight and all that. So I could go ahead and do that if I want, but I just wanted to emphasize that you could have multiple constructors. The other thing I wanted to emphasize is the fact that when you create an object, this object right here, this variable, person variable, doesn't hold a value. It holds a reference, which means that basically it points to a memory location, but it doesn't actually hold a value. And let me just show you why that's important, and maybe this will clear it up a little bit. So if I go ahead and delete all this, I've created two persons. One of them is dad1, and the other one, and I'm actually going to change it to the other constructor, in which I will have uh, I think it's black skin and black eyes. Okay, so I've created dad1, and he has let me just double check here. Yeah, it's black skin and then black eye color. So we have this person here, and it's dad1, and that's his attributes. Now what I did is I did a second person, and I did a variable equals to dad1, so they point to the same object, which is this person, which is black skin and black eyes. So anyways, the point that I'm trying to get here is, let's say I changed dad1. So I changed the first one, but I don't change the second one. I just changed the first one. Let's see what happens. Let me just comment this out, because this is the part that I'm going to get to. Okay, so as you can see, I change in the first one. Remember how they were both black? Well, it changed it to purple for both, even though I only changed the first one. And the reason is the whole reference thing that I talked about. This variable right here is pointing to basically the object that this holds, which is this right here. This is the object. Okay, so they're both pointing to the object. So that's why if you change one, it changes the other. They're pointing to the exact same object. Okay, Now that is different from regular variables, and I'm going to show you here. So in regular variables, and I have an example here, which is the primitive variables, I should say. For example, I have an integer x equals to 10, and then I set y equals to x. So I'm doing the exact same thing here. I'm setting the second one equals to the first one, and then I'm changing the first one again. And I'm not changing the second one, I'm only changing the first one. Okay, so what happens here? Let's go ahead and see. Well, as you can see, the first one changed, but the second one didn't. So that you can see the difference there between the reference variables and the primitive variables is that the primitive variables pass the primitive data types pass values, while the object data types pass references which point to a specific object. So as you can see, this 10 right here is not a specific 10, right? It's just it's an actual value that is passed to the y, so each one has a different 10, you could say. And so if you change x to something else, it doesn't affect y. So hopefully that explains it a little bit more. The other thing I wanted to show is, I don't think I'm going to need that, I'm going to delete it, is the fact that you can have static variable in classes. And what static variables are is that you put this keyword static before the variable, and you can do it to classes too. I'm sorry, to functions too. So as you can see, static, and then boom, no error. Okay, so what that means is that particular function, or that particular variable inside the class does not belong to a specific object, but it belongs to the class. Or you could say that it belongs to every object or no object. It depends which way you look at it. But the important thing is that this right here is not part of a specific object. For example, and the reason why I named this one population, because it's a little more intuitive. So for example, each person has a skin color, each person has an eye color, each individual person has their own height, each individual person has their own weight. But no individual person in this world that we live in has an individual population, if that makes sense. I don't have a population in me, right? But we as people can be part of a population, you could say. So I know it's a little bit strange, but the reason why you'd want to do this is, for example, if you wanted to keep, let's say you're making people in your classes, and you're making 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different people here. So you do person 1, or person dad, person son, and I didn't capitalize that, oops. And you do person kid. Anyways, so if you wanted to keep track of how many people you have created, or the population, you would want to create a static variable, something that doesn't belong to any specific object but belongs to the class. So the way that you would do that is you would put you could put population plus plus. So anytime you create and you would do it here too, actually. Anytime you would create so population plus plus. Okay, so I gotta put this one here. Anytime you create a new person, it adds to this value, and this will keep growing. So that's another type of variable, and I guess identifier, is the static, and you can use it here too. So for example, if you wanted to, I'm trying to think what would be something for the I can't think of something off the top of my head as far as function goes, but anyways, it comes handy in function. In fact, if you look at your main function here, it's a static function. So you can just go ahead and call it without creating a main object. Okay, so that's another thing. And the last thing I wanted to go over is the visibility modifiers. So I think I went over this before, but I'll go into more specific. So the way that it works is each variable or each class or each function, they have a specific, I guess you could say, kind of like a scope. And it depends on how you want that class or how you want something accessed. So for example, if I didn't want anybody, any other classes or any other packages to touch these variables, I would declare them as private. So we'll declare all these are private, and what that means is that only this class, the person class, is allowed to touch these uh, variables. So and that's actually how the price should be done, because you don't want other classes messing around with these particular values that basically only apply to the person class. You can actually do that to a lot of different things. You can do it to a method. You can do it to let's see what it says. Legal modifier only public abstract. Oh, I guess you can't do it to a class. I thought you could do an anonymous inner classes. Anyways, I guess you can. You have to do it public. Anyway, so I guess it doesn't apply to. I have to look a little bit more into that. But anyways, so you can do public. You can do it private here. You can do it to functions that you only want access by a specific class. And anyway, so that's one is the private, which is kind of like the most restricted of all of it. The next one you have is the default. So for example, if I had declared, let me see if I can do it here. You should be able to do it. So as you can see, I took the public out of this class, and what that basically says is, hey, I only want this class to be used or accessed by other classes in this same package. So anybody in this classes package is allowed to use this class. Anybody else in other packages is not allowed to use it. Okay, so that's the next one. It's called the default visibility modifier, which is you don't have anything, you don't have private, public, or anything, and so that's the next most restricted. Okay, so then we're opening it up even more. So the next one is called protected. So, and then protected you can't do to classes. So you can't do protected class. Okay, so you have to, that's one of those modifiers that you can't do. But you can do it to variables over here. So you can do a protected variable, and what that means is that only the same package, so it's kind of like the default modifiers where you don't have anything, which is anybody in the package can access the variables, or any inherited class, and maybe I'll talk more about inheritance later in another video. Any inherited classes or any child classes can access these variables. Okay, so that's the next one, and the last one is public. And then basically public just means that anybody anywhere is allowed to access these variables, which it has its uses, but you also want to be careful if you have these variables inside your class. You want to be careful if you want to put them public, because then they can be accessed from anywhere. And so I'll just show you here the order. So private is the most closed, and then you have default, which basically is nothing, so you don't actually put anything for default. You don't put any keywords. The next one, that default is actually I believe it's for the interfaces, so that keyword has nothing to do with this. The next one is protected, and then the next one is public. So that's the kind of the order. So this is more open to everybody. This is the least open to everybody.